for spending next year. But then our overall tax rate, just estimated right now, we're still working on it, but estimated right now, $11.97. Current overall tax levy rate is $12.23. So coming down about a quarter or so, 26 cents on the overall levy rate.
And that's what the budget worksheets about.
Any questions on where we're currently at with the certified budget? I don't think Jessica's working through the worksheets, which is a pretty arduous process, but there really won't be any change on these. And so unless something comes up, because there's not a lot you can change here. Basically the management amount, is flexible, and then the ISL, the amount that you do or property tax, and the amount that you do in income surtax, those are kind of the only couple of things. So we should just, when we do our first budget hearing in March, this should be right where we're at.
So management is efficient, so it's coming on as well as potentially.
It is. Yes, we've accounted for our current buildings here, central campus buildings, and the new facility. Okay.
Next, we have update on district technology program.
And for the board members that are joining us on the Google Meet, I sent that. That came a little later, maybe half an hour ago or so. Brandon's presentation that I'll scroll through here.
Do you want to scroll through it, John, or do you want me to connect?
Oh, I'm happy to scroll through it.
Okay.
That way we just, yeah.
All right, can everybody hear me? Perfect. All right, so I just kind of wanted to give you guys an overview of technology. Normally, I think we have this meeting normally in February, go over the budget, kind of the state of technology. So again, I'm Brandon Ridinger, the technology director. I've been with the school system for 3 years now. Been through one of the device refreshes. So I know big thing coming up is the iPad refresh in that process. So, some of the slides will kind of go through those numbers and kind of give you just an overall state of everything. So,
Hey, Brandon,
Yep.
since we're live streaming, would you mind taking a microphone?
Sure.
You can pull it out of there and just hold down on the button and it should come on.
can you hear me now? Okay. Again, it's a little bit about me on the first slide there. It's all on the website, so I'm not going to bore you with those facts. On the next slide, got the rest of the staff. So that's Tammy Herr, and she's been with the district the longest. She's been here twice for over 15 years. She does a lot of our back-end file management, so our device management, configuration. A lot of our Infinite Campus has kind of got onto her as well, taking over some of that stuff that Lisa Dunn used to do for us. So that's a lot of her day is device configuration and Infinite Campus. And then we have Drew Norton. He's been here, I believe, 4 years. And he's kind of the main tech that you're going to see going around to support the staff and students. He knows a lot about the Apple operating systems, kind of what's new, how to use them. So kind of that current troubleshooting. So here we have on the next slide, the network infrastructure. And overall, the network's in a pretty good spot. We upgraded the access points last summer. And what that will do is basically allow more devices to connect to those access points, which our students are using. And it'll use less battery life and have less interference. So once we get these new devices, they'll be able to take advantage of that, which currently our current devices aren't taking full advantage. So that's good. In the budget, when we get to that part, I know we talked about last year doing the server upgrade, but I went ahead and pushed that off, so that'll be in this upcoming budget year. And then the battery backups in like the network closets are getting to a point where they're not holding up very long. So depending on where the network closet is, some of them might stay up for 10 minutes and some might stay up for as little as 1. So when we have those little power hiccups, once in a while, there may be a building that goes down and the rest stay up just because of that. So that would be the currently only other need that I would say would be the network infrastructure. And then again, here on the next slide, we got the server upgrade. I've got quotes from last year. I'll go ahead and get new quotes when we go to purchase it. But again, it's basically what houses are on-premise servers. So we do have some servers that are in the cloud, like Infinite Campus and ClassLink and things like that. But we do still house some information here. So this would cover that. Everything is kind of just right now in the life. So if any parts or warranty work or stuff like that, but it's no longer there. So I've replaced some hard drives myself. But yeah, it's something that we definitely need to do.
What are server lifespans?
Typically, I would say 7 to 10 years. The warranty and repair, that's normally, of course, what is very interesting. So last year, at this time of the year, we had 105 repairs in with Apple devices. So for our students, laptops, student iPads, and staff laptops. Right now, we're only at 61. I think that there is probably a lot more that just haven't been turned in at the middle school. I've seen a lot of missing keys that probably aren't turned in, so students just being hard on the keyboard, sometimes for playing video games. Or even some students just are picking at the keys for no reason, and then they break the keyboard. High school, I would think that we'd have most of our repairs turned in from what I've seen. And then this bottom line here where it breaks down the middle school and high school. So every other year we've had more middle school repairs, and this year we've had more high school repairs at this time. Another thing to note is the warranty over AppleCare is out May 27th, so that's the last day. So we have to have our repairs in by then. So come a few times here towards the end of the year, we'll have advisory classes, look through the computers, assess if there's any damage, and we'll take those and get those repaired for those students that haven't turned those devices in. Like most years in the past, it's mainly screen damage. So 45 of those 54 laptops repaired are screen damage. That's what we see the most. Just from either mishandling and picking the laptops up incorrectly, putting too much stuff in the backpack, or even putting stuff in between the screen and closing the lid. iPads, we only have 11 iPads there listed, and pretty much the majority of all of them are always the headphone jack at the elementary level. We've only had one broken screen. So come the new Apple devices with the iPads, I see a lot less repairs coming to us. Of course, it won't have an auxiliary jack. It'll have to be an adapter to plug in those headphones, which will be just the charging port that you guys are used to.
Hey, Brandon,
Yep.
would you mention kind of the difference as we look at starting a new lease with the iPad solution? I've heard you mention before that generally if we have damage on an iPad, they just turn around and send us a new iPad. Is that right?
Yes. So I would say, I don't want to say quite 100% of the time, but every other time they just send us a new iPad. I have to go back and look. But typically, even if it's just the auxiliary port, which is what we have most of the time, they go ahead and send that back. They sent us a new one. We had a laptop that went through a fire, and Apple actually repaired it. It still turned on. So kind of the difference is you're looking for new devices, so then should make it easier if we have like a newly enrolled student or something, then we can actually hand them a brand new device and not have any damage or wear from another student. Kind of as I mentioned before, as you guys were asking questions, so the Apple Success team has been working with us. So they look at like our network configuration and say, is there anything that we're blocking? So when you think of, we'll just say roughly 2,000 to make it easy, students or devices, all reaching out to like the Apple servers when it comes to updates, that can slow the network down. So they have what they call a server that basically only downloads the Apple updates, and then our updates will go to that instead of going out to the internet, and so it causes much less network congestion. So we're currently working with the Success team on how many of those devices do we need? Do we need one per building? Do we only need one? And so what that would be a Mac Mini, which are varying from $500 to $1,000, depending on the configuration. And I call it an Apple caching server. So it just, again, it's those updates. So that's something we're currently working through. Another thing that they have suggested is the way we use Apple Classroom, to not let it get the data from Infinite Campus and pull in those students and create those classes. What they're asking us to do is an ad hoc. And then let me get to another slide, but our new MDM Mosel that configures those iPads, there's some configuration in there that will make Apple Classroom work much better for the teachers and the students. So yeah, that's kind of the overall for the Success team. So Mosel is the MDM we're looking at that is part of that lease agreement. They work much better with Apple than our current vendor, FileWave. FileWave kind of works with all operating systems, so it can be from phones to Windows to Chrome devices to Apple devices. And so Mosel only works with Apple devices. So typically, when Apple has updates to their operating systems or just their general updates, Mosel is already ready for them and beta tested them. Has a lot more configuration options where we can better control those student devices. Another thing we're looking at is, so currently with the laptops, right now in FileWave, we have to manually set up user accounts on those devices. When we set them up and get ready for the students, we'd be looking at integrating with Google, so we can just use that one Google account for those students, and then we'll be logging in that way. We also have an option of creating a QR code for enrollment, and depending on what we choose, kind of Apple and Mosel's thought is it put it more on the students or the teachers where they could go around and we could already have the devices configured. They could scan a QR code and then that device would be ready in a few minutes just by pulling down that configuration data. Kind of our thought process right now is probably we would set up the iPads for elementary all the way, make sure they're logged in and configured correctly. And if that goes well, then maybe leave it up to the middle school and high school students to log in. But another thing that we would have is pretty much all of the devices should be ready for today's school. We shouldn't have to go around, go to each building, make sure devices are logged in. So that was one good thing with going with the Mosel, is getting the devices in the students' hands and working day one.
How were the elementary iPads done, like, in these previous years? How were they set up?
They're set up, we don't have to manually create an account on those like we did laptops, but they're still kind of like a manual enrollment, where right now, we'd have to kind of log into the Wi-Fi, click some buttons, wait for stuff to pull down, and then afterwards, we'd have to manually put the device into a Apple Classroom for the teacher and do some of that configuration. But the iPads were easier than the laptops, even using the old Indian solution. Some of this I've already talked a little bit about, but we have 10 iPads currently testing at the middle school, high school. What I'm kind of working with the instructional coaches as well throughout this, mainly Sean Striegel and Jennifer Slagle. So we talked about maybe removing the laptops so they are forced more to use the iPads. Because we're not seeing in the building, sometimes they're using their laptops instead of the iPads. Or we can also switch up the students. It doesn't take us long to set up iPads. So I'm kind of working with the instructional coaches on that and just trying to come up with, what all we need for testing. Again, kind of. Go ahead.
When it comes to ISAPS testing, obviously the elementary kids have already done ISAPS on their iPads, right? So does it look different? And should we be testing some?
Yes, so we actually have been testing that using iPads in years past. So we've had homeschool use iPads because it's easier. Some of our ELL kids as well. So it's I would say all of our statewide testing is actually easier on the iPad to test with because there's less kind of quirky stuff that could go wrong. So we actually prefer that for state testing.
Are we able to do more than four?
Yes, we have devices. So if there's a good number that you guys want to shoot for, yeah,
Sample size.
this was kind of a start.
Let's start, yeah, and I get that.
That wouldn't be a problem. And again, kind of we talked about before, the SEC concerns. I don't know if you guys have any other questions or anything, but some of this slide was kind of left over from last year, but for those that are new, we manage the Google Chrome web browser so we can better control things. We get better alerts, notifications, software not being installed involuntary, so that's where like the VPNs used to come in, or the games, just to better control kind of the internet piece of those student devices. Does anyone have questions on that one? All right, so next we have the web filter. So currently right now we're using Hapara this year as the web filter. And like last year I mentioned, it has some AI features where it doesn't only just look at a website and the category and blocks it, it can analyze the data that's on there. With what we're looking at purchasing through Mosul has its own web filtering as well. So we can use that and not use Hapara. That part I haven't got to test yet with the Apple Success team. So the plan is to start that in March, so we'll have more data later. And can obviously report that out, but there's no sense in paying for another product if this one does a good job. Central Campus, Wesleyan, all the buildings are networked together. They're wired connection. There's fiber kind of built in between the buildings, and then they're connected. So the internet, I just want to remind you guys, is coming into the PEO building. So I know when we're looking at doing other things with the PEO building in the future, we just have to remember to plan for that internet connection and how everything's configured at Central Campus. Currently, they're not on the school network, they're just on their own network. That is something that can change just by a piece of hardware or a configuration change where Lisco kind of connects our dark fiber with their internet fiber. So we have a couple options if that's, as we're planning ahead. So if we can do the same thing out with the new facilities as well. It'll be kind of the same thing. So most likely, we'll probably put a hardware VPN in, so those machines up there the school network. And then we just have the budget and I'll let John go ahead and pull that up. Any questions so far?
So you hear a lot about leaks and breaches and things like that. So ransomware, where do you feel like we're at? That radar risk?
The risk is only getting greater and greater with AI, supercomputers, kind of the technology of and tools that are out there for the bad guys. Kind of what we've seen is they're no longer going for the lower hanging fruit. They're kind of going for the big splash items, like the healthcare industry. Can we, take down the whole healthcare industry? Or instead of going after a school, let's go after the power school and get tons of student data. And so going back to the power school, when those alerts came out, I'm not going to name names here, but I reached out, talked to another district, helped them kind of help analyze the data, look at everything that they were doing, and just kind of be in the room there to, as they could ask questions and I could provide my input. Not being a power school user, not really knowing much about the system, but one thing that came of that is social security numbers. So some schools had social security numbers, some didn't. The power school hack, so they had basically, there's two tables that had fields in it, and one was a student data field, and one was a teacher data field. And so those had things like name, address, kind of that location piece. And so there, inside of like the registration, you could have had social security number in there. Obviously, we don't collect those ourselves. But once that happened, we went ahead and ran a report, and we only had 2 social security numbers in our database. Those are no longer there, they're removed. So of course, if something like that were to ever happen, let's minimize the data. Of course, we're trying to do everything we can to secure the data. We had a meeting with Infinite Campus this afternoon, and they sent some documents on basically how we can secure the data. So one thing I'm looking at doing this summer is to get our students and our staff basically be able to log in with the Google single sign-on, and then we can use the security of that and like multi-factor and those things. Again, it's a concern. It can happen. The good news is most of our server in-house data, there's not much identifying information in there. Where the concern is like Infinite Campus, that's in the cloud. Software Unlimited is in the cloud. And like our ASOP online, where your health information, that's it. So those are cloud-based, those are ones that we currently house. So again, if they were ever targeted and got hit, then we are still somewhat liable, so are they. So yeah, just trying to follow as much best practices as we can.
So we're not backed up on the server, like for Infinite Campus then?
So they do our backups, it's housed, but like for instance, likely what happened to Power School is, of course they've never said it, but they hired a kind of like a data broker to basically initiate the ransom conversations. And Power School was confident that with what they paid, and they never said what they paid, that their data was deleted off the dark web. So rather than paying a ransom for getting kind of like stopping stuff from working, they paid the ransom for making sure that that data is not out there for others to use.
So as we look at the PEPL spending plan, again, if you think back to the budget the certified budget that conversation that we had, our voted PEPAL at $1.34 and the board approved PEPAL at 33 cents. It generates, I'll give you a baseline here before we go through some of the line items. So we're anticipating by the end of the year, June 30th of this year, an estimated PEPAL balance of about $2.7 million based on what we budgeted and based on the revenues that are still to come in for PEPAL. So then if we take our estimated revenue for next year, for fiscal year 26, the $1.152 million, and add those two together, we're at $3,841,984 as a total. And then again, just trying to build our expenditures as close as we can. Our estimated expenditures would be just over $1 million. We'll go through that here in a bit. So that would leave at the end of fiscal year 26 as an estimate about $2.75 million. And when you get to it, Brandon, I did include on this, when we get to that big item of non-instructional software, we can scroll down here and you can kind of share what some of those things are in that non-instructional software. But I'll let you go through and I can add in our conversations, or add into the conversations we have.
So the top line here, we got network maintenance. So basically we got switches. So what would cover the new building there for the bus garage, central receiving, buildings and grounds. But also, that would also cover if there's possibly a change in central campus. So you're looking at, depending on what type of switches are needed, you're probably looking at 3 to 5 switches when it comes to our current environment. So that's where we came up with that $25,000. Our renewals, basically that's pretty much comparable from last year. And so Cisco is our main network infrastructure. So that's basically just paying for their support, updates, anything that we need help with when it comes to the networking side. And then the other network license renewals that follows, we have software and hardware that basically reports out like if anything is down. Our wireless access points, all of those kind of just we put under the other category when it comes to the network. So we have roughly about I think 230 access points around the district currently. The non-instructional software there, will.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
ask Brandon, you kind of
Yep.
walk through what the non-instructional software is.
So the non-instructional softwares are the software that's mainly non-curriculum based. So you see like Frontline that you guys use, well, the staff mainly use, where they're clocking in and out, time off. Assembly, you guys are all aware of. Incident IQ, that one you might not be aware of. That is our ticketing system that we use here for IT tickets.
The Traversa is the is the transportation system.
Transportation piece, yep. Traversa is the transportation piece. Infinite Campus, you guys are all well aware of. That's our student information system. Nearpod is, I know we got, I don't remember off the top of my head if that's for the whole network or if we're only using it in the middle school and high school. I'd have to go back and look. ClassLink is our single sign-on option that's highly used at the elementary levels, where the students have the little QR code. They're able to read that and then click on the app and it signs them in. So it makes things easier for the elementary students. It is available number of grades as well, it's just not as used as much. Showtech Solutions, they do a lot of our server maintenance, our backups. They look through the dark web for any of our student data. They provide some licensing with like Office 365. That's so kind of when you think of support for like servers and like the backend backups, those things. Library Sys is a little newer. We've only had that one in a couple of years, so that's our library software. That's cloud-based as well. Juicebox, the new website that we are going to be implementing this summer. That would be the vendor there. GoDaddy is kind of our certs and kind of domain name thing. So when you go to our website, that's the stuff that makes that work in the back end. Bark does our, what's the right word for this one?
Monitors.
Yeah, like student monitoring. It monitors basically as long as the student's logged in, it can basically monitor and look for self-harm, threatening situations, things like that, and alert us. Respondus is the lockdown browser that we use to take tests in. Touchpoint is the devices that we use to clock in. So those are they kind of look like iPads, but they're actually
Time clocks.
time clocks. Canvas, that's again an LMS that's highly used in the high school, a lot in the middle school as well. So that's where basically your teachers are putting their instruction on and letting the students log in and update their information, their classwork there. Turnitin is a piece that uses basically to check for plagiarism. It's used mainly in the English department here in the high school, middle school.
So is that where that Mosul software will be too?
That will actually be in the Apple lease, and we can pull that up once we get through here. Pull up that option 3. Web filtering, current web filtering, we do have 2 web filters. We have an on-premise web filter as well called iBoss. We used to have the cloud piece. We weren't happy with the cloud piece, and then that's when we went to that Lapara. So basically, having the on-premise, basically what that does is anything that plugs into a network port, or basically any other device. So let's say somebody joined the guest network or got a hold of our wireless passwords, then that device would then be going through the local or on-premise. I like having it there just as a kind of peace of mind to make sure that we're, meeting all the state requirements. The Apple lease, we'll pull up that document again. There's a few other things listed in the Apple lease that I want to touch on, as Derek mentioned. Classroom technology, that's mainly just any smartboard, TV, any projector, anything kind of breaks, just so we have a budget item there so we can replace those. Camera systems updates. Again, we've got the elementaries pretty much done. There was a few things on back order that we're just waiting for them to come back in and install when it comes to those elementary buildings. But mainly that would be used for the new facilities at Central Campus. The carts, once we get into that Apple document, we'll be getting new carts, so that number would just be kind of covering the middle school at this point. So we won't be needing to use all of that $5,000. The server replacement, last quotes were right around the $110,000 mark, so that's where we came up with that 120. Copier services, we have 2 years left of our lease for our copiers. We have been talking to Access to see if it makes sense to possibly with, the moving of buildings. So like Deb's big, copy machine, does it make sense to just put in a new one rather than move it, get it stood back up? So, talking with Access Systems kind of on the back end, if that even makes sense to, present that Jessica and John. Other equipment, again, that's just more there, for basically any unexpected costs, that don't, have, part of the annual lease agreement. So, I know one thing that we're looking at is the high school, the monitors in the lab are getting old and broken. So that would be, kind of the plan, to use some of that money for there. And then other,
Yeah, we always try and budget some other, for things that come up. I think about things like, when buildings have requests for technology that, we wouldn't have to hit the general fund for, we could use Bethel for it. Like, the new TVs, TVs at the different buildings, that would be one example. Yeah, just anything that we could potentially pay for out of PEPAL rather than general fund. We just want to try and account, have some funds for that.
any other questions here before we move on to the Apple lease agreement, document for the numbers on there?
I think you're good.
Back to the.
So on the Apple refresh document there's basically a couple items. You've got the staff, admin, laptops, and cases. But lower, about midway through, you'll see the Mosel there listed. So we get 1 year of that for free. And that would cover basically the device management piece of those, as well as the web filtering. But underneath that, we've got the carts. So what we'd be doing is replacing all the carts in the elementaries. They're getting to the point where they weren't made real sturdy, or as sturdy as we'd like. So they're just getting to the point where they're worn down, and the electrical inside of them is getting worn down. So that's why those are in there, and that can be part of that 3-year lease. And then just the bottom couple lines there, we're looking at, instead of an Apple Pencil, they make a Logitech Crayon that's actually cheaper and easier to use for the kids. Again, that's something that we'll probably buy separate. We just kind of wanted to give you guys a number there so you're aware of them. And then that bottom USB-C to 3.5 millimeter adapter, that would be the adapter for headphones. So those are just a couple things I'm going to point out there. Anything else for me? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. So, my intention would be to have the PEPAL spending plan on March 10th for your consideration to approve.
Sounds good. Anybody have anything else? Linda, Sarah, thank you for joining us. And we will adjourn at 6:58.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
See you all next Wednesday.
Yes,
Next Wednesday. We look forward to seeing you here in Mount Pleasant.
I hope to be. Thank you. I'm ready. Coming along fine though. I'd say the surgery was successful. Back doesn't hurt at all. Just trying to get the leg stronger.
It's great. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
Good to see everybody.
Bye.
Bye.